Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Living on the Verge podcast. This is me, Virginia, and I'm so glad to have you back for another episode. Let's get started. We have so much to cover. We are going to be getting caught up on the Valley. We have a ton of Bravo news, some pop culture news. I'll tell you what I did over the last week, and then we'll be back next week to get you caught up on Atlanta, and we'll just take it from there. So, let's jump right on in because there is a lot to do. First of all, what did I do last week? Well, it was Mother's Day. Last weekend, my husband and I headed out to the Famoso drag strip. It's in McFarland, California, kind of north of Bakersfield. And our reason for being there was because my husband is a huge Street Outlaws fan. And they were filming an episode and they had all the drag race cars there. And we had a good time. It was really loud. I'm going to post a couple of videos on my Instagram so that you can hear the difference between like the regular cars that were there racing and then the ones that were being filmed for the Street Outlaws. I ended up leaving because it was really hot, so I was sitting in the car, but my husband filmed the big drag race cars and I could hear them from the car. It was a good time. We had a really nice time. My husband was literally in his element. He bought a couple of shirts. He was able to shake hands with, some of his favorite drivers. And now we'll get to see the show when it airs and know that we were there. So that was fun. We drove home on Saturday night because we were having a get together on Sunday. My boys and my husband all got together and made brunch for me and the other moms in our family. And it was lovely. We had a Mexican style brunch with huevos rancheros and chilaquiles, rice and beans. We had fun. It went relatively quickly. It was a brunch. So we ended it early enough that the moms were still able to enjoy their afternoon and their evening, but we were able to come together and celebrate. So it was a really fast but fun week last week, and I am ready to see what life brings me over the next week. So let's move on to Bravo birthdays. Happy birthday to Luann de Lesseps and Candy Burris. They both have birthdays tomorrow, May 17th. And Teresa Giudice has a birthday on the 18th. And Wendy Osefo on May 21st. Happy birthday, Bravo Labs. And in other Bravo news, well, we're going to start off with a little bit of sad news. Lydia McLaughlin is a former Real Housewife of Orange County housewife. And she's had a really rough year. Her mother, who, if you saw the show, was adorable, passed away earlier this year after a really long cancer battle. And then not more than, I think, a month or so ago, her brother was fatally shot by Newport Beach police. And she is now, I believe, trying to look into the possibilities of starting some sort of a lawsuit. This is all alleged. All of that to say, Lydia, I'm really sorry that you're struggling so much. We wish you all of the best. And, I hope things get better for you. Lala Kent. Lala Kent has been doing some stuff recently, you guys. She's keeping herself relevant, that's for sure. She recently did an ad. It was an anti-SeaWorld ad. Did you guys happen to see that? She stripped down nude and is in a pool. I didn't see the full ad, but it's for PETA, and she's always been kind of anti-SeaWorld. And she's a real big PETA proponent. So she did that ad recently. And then she also talks on her podcast most recently about how she made up with Kristen Doty. She was able to admit that she was the one at fault for their fallout, and apparently everything is good. And I guess there was a baby shower that she was having for a mutual friend, and Kristen, it was at Lala's house, and Kristen wanted to go, but given their riff, she didn't want, to impose at somebody else's house. So they finally made up, and Kristen came to the baby shower, and now everything is apparently good. Then we have Lala is having a really, really rough time. I'm so sorry. She started sharing with us this little growth that she had in her eye. And she did that on Instagram, kind of letting us know, hey, I have this, if anybody knows what it is. And then she followed up and let us know that she had gone to the doctor. You guys, it's a precancerous growth. It's very sad. She's handling it like a trooper. I'm very proud of her strength. Lala admittedly, kind of falls apart when it comes to medical things. So the fact that she continued to inform us, she's going to be on a 3-week regimen of chemotherapy eye drops. And we just wish her all the best. I really hope that that is as far as this goes, and that the chemotherapy eye drop treatment resolves the issue, and that she is able to get back to the business of being a mama to Ocean and Sosa. My thoughts are with you, Lala. I hope everything is, going well, and that you get better real, real soon. And then lastly about Lala, she was recently asked who she'd rather be with, Jesse Lawley or Jax Taylor. And she said Jax, because he isn't smart enough and Jesse is too calculating. So, Lala, do you like to be with men that are weaker than you so that you can manipulate them, or you could be calculating? I don't understand. I get that you find Jesse is calculating, and from the previews that we see on what's going to happen between you and him later on in the season, there's no love lost from you to him. But it bothers me that you say you'd rather be with a dumb guy. I'm just going to leave that there. Let's move on. In other housewives news, Real Housewife of Atlanta's Portia Williams' ex-husband, Simon, is still in ICE custody and has to be escorted to court for his divorce proceedings. That's a mess. This guy is just a bloody mess. I hope, Portia, that this ends for you soon, and that you're able to, get back to your life pre-Simon. And I'm sure that you've learned a big lesson, so I'm going to spare you any sort of scolding or lecture. Yeah. All right. In Real Housewives of Orange County news, Gina is being dragged into her boyfriend Travis's trial for his divorce by Travis's ex-wife. Now, this has been going on for a while. Travis's ex-wife is causing all kinds of drama, and it's all of the reason why Travis and Gina no longer live together, because Gina wanted to make sure that she was able to keep things clean and her name out of the mud when it came to Travis's divorce. But somehow she has allegedly been dragged back in and is now become a part of the divorce proceedings. I hope it's over for you guys soon. I really love Travis and Gina. I got to meet them recently, and I really like them. They're super cute together. And then just as a bonus, Gina had a birthday over the weekend, and I sent her a birthday post with our picture that I took when we met, and she liked it. So that's kind of fun. That's always fun when the housewives or the Bravo Labs recognize that you exist. And in other Orange County news, Tamra Judge said on her recent episode of Two Teas in a Pod that it was the roughest year of filming in her life, and that she is so glad the season is over. I told you guys that I saw a big fight during the filming that I went to. It sounds like it just went on and on and on for her. And when I thought about this, it occurred to me, Katie Janela did not go to Amsterdam on the trip, and neither was she at the filming of the boot scootin'. So clearly Emily did not invite her, and from what I'm hearing, their riff continues. We'll see. I don't know for sure what is going on. All of this is alleged, but I'm really excited for the next season. Teresa Giudice and Alexia Napola are showing they're thirsty. You guys, they are broke, and they're doing appearances everywhere they can find. I last checked, and they're doing appearance, I think it was in Atlanta, and tickets were like $40, and there's still tickets available. Don't quote me, but allegedly, Teresa is having some financial issues, especially because New Jersey hasn't, gone back to taping, and we don't know when they're going to. Alexia, I don't know why you're joining her, except that you guys are friends. But honestly, if you ask me, she's not the person to be surrounding yourself with or making appearances with at this point, because she's in a lot of trouble with the IRS. She's kind of a falling star. And, if you guys like Teresa, I'm sorry. I never have, but, that's my opinion. And I just think that, it's kind of all coming to a head. All of the wealth and, pageantry that she has been able to show us over the last few years, her house of cards is crumbling down, and now she's, selling herself for $40 a ticket so that she can sign somebody's shirt. I don't know. Real Housewives of Potomac is definitely filming, you guys. And we know that Real Housewives of Salt Lake City is currently wrapping up. Salt Lake City just had their finale cast trip in Greece. And we're also hearing grumblings about Meredith Marks having been suspended. She denies it. She says she was not suspended, and she is currently still part of the cast. In VPR news, the new Vanderpump reboot is filming. I hear that they are currently filming at SUR on most Wednesdays. And the Real Housewives, Lisa Vanderpump, she just tore up the cast of the original Vanderpump Rules on Watch What Happens Live. So let's talk about that for a couple of minutes. We had Ken and Doggy Donut in the audience, and the secret word was Kyle. Of course it was. Vanderpump Hotel is slated to open very soon after BravoCon. So we know that's in November of 2025. And when asked how she reacts to what's going on with Jax, she said it was very upsetting, and she hopes he takes it seriously and distances himself from people who are no good. And then she says that she's happy that Brittany is finally standing up to Jax. Andy says Kristen is coming to her own. And Lisa looks at him and says, that's a trigger. Well, I guess she still doesn't care too much for Kristen Doty, huh? She said she wasn't shocked about Schwartz and Sandy's having to close. That's a little bit shady. And then she shades Sandoval and calls him a traitor. LOL. She thinks she's so clever. Lisa thinks Katie's comment about the new VPR cast being cheap is true. And she says it's better than paying for those expensive asses. Geez Louise, those expensive asses made you a lot of money for a lot of years. And it's so quick how you can flip a switch and turn on people who you spent year after year on reunions trying to get to make up so that you could have another season and continue to line your pockets. Listen, I'm probably never going to be one of Lisa Vanderpump's VIP guests, but she really is not a loyal one in my opinion. Then she's asked about PK and Dorit, and she said she knew that they weren't going to make it, and she knew that they weren't being honest on the show, that they had mutual friends. And she was really pissed off about PK being called a bad father. She thought it was in poor taste. Then they talked about Stassi Schroeder. Lisa said she's given Stassi a second chance. She says business is good, but LA has taken a big hit. No kidding. When I was there at SUR, it was not crowded. Remember? Go back to the Weekend at WeHo episode and you can hear all about it. When asked about Garcelle unfollowing the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills cast, she said Garcelle is not a follower. She's a leader. And then when asked, if she's spilling a lot of tea about LVP in her book, Sheena's book. So Lisa's asked about Sheena's book and what she thinks. And she says that Sheena has nothing else to say, and then goes on to admit that she heard all of the latest stuff that Sheena has been saying about her, and that Sheena has to have her in her book so that she can have some sales. The lesson here, you guys, is be careful who you befriend. Literally. This lady is not somebody that I would want in my friend circle. She has no loyalty, and that's important. In this day and age, friends are hard to come by, and good, loyal, real, true friends are even harder to come by. So that was Watch What Happens Live. And guess what, you guys? This weekend is World Dog Day at West Hollywood Park. It's Saturday from 11 to 4. It's the Vanderpump Dog Gala that LVP does every year. And after dragging her the way I just did, I'm a little bit afraid to say that I'll be there this Saturday. So I'll see you there, and maybe we can roam around West Hollywood together and go to Sir, maybe go to Tom. Who knows? There's a lot to see in West Hollywood. Hit me up on my DMs if you'd like to join me. We have a small group that's getting together, but we'd love to have you. So that's this weekend, May 17th at West Hollywood Park. I'll see you all there. In BravoCon news, BravoCon tickets are coming soon. Tickets go on sale June 6th at 12 p.m. Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific. A general admission 3-day pass will set you back $550, while the VIP pass will cost you $1,200. The alleged cast of the new Real Housewives of Rhode Island has leaked. I'm going to give you the names. We have Brianna LaTorre, Joe Allen Tiberi, Elizabeth McGraw, Monique Pass, Rosie Woods, Alicia Commodi, Stephanie Costa, and Kelsey Swanson. I will research all of the names and I'll have updates for you next week. In the meantime, I just wanted to let you know what the alleged cast names are so that you can all follow them on Instagram and get in on the ground floor. Bravo has announced 4 new series. I'm sure you've all heard about it. It's big news everywhere this week. We have 4 series. Most of them are reboots. The first one is The Real Housewives of Rhode Island, which I just told you about. Then we have The Ladies of London, which is coming back. I guess there were 3 seasons of it before. It's coming back with a whole new cast, and everybody's really excited about it. I'll be honest, I didn't watch the original Ladies of London, so I don't know what I was missing, but I'll probably tune into this and see. I usually like to give new shows, 1, 2, 3 episodes before I decide if I want to like them or not. And so this will be no different. And then we have the Shaws of Sunset by way of the Valley. So that's not really the name. I guess it's a working title, but it's a reboot of the Shaws of Sunset, and it's going to be done in the Valley. So I also did not watch Shaws of Sunset. This gives me reason to kind of want to go back and watch it. I hear there's a lot of drama and gossip that crossed over into reality and pop culture. Like reality meaning real life with some of the cast members. And so I'm kind of curious to hear what it's all about. And so of course I'll give this show a chance as well. And then nobody else is as excited about this as I am. And I think maybe it's because they don't get it. Most podcasters that I have heard report on this, as well as almost everybody I have seen on Instagram report on this, says that the new show, Wife Swap Reality Housewives Edition, is supposed to have Melissa Gorga from Real Housewives of New Jersey, Emily Simpson from Orange County, Angie Casanevas from Salt Lake City, and Wendy Osefo from Potomac. Now, everybody is saying that they're going to swap husbands, and it's like the old wife swap show that we used to see. Well, that's not really what's happening. Now, apparently, one of these 4 has dropped off because the last thing I saw was Melissa, Emily, and Wendy. So I think Angie dropped out and they're looking for a 4th person. I'm not sure. That's all alleged. But it seems that what is really happening on this show is they will be swapping with regular people, with regular, unknown, everyday housewives. That seems like it would be interesting, you guys. I'm going to be watching. I guess I'm just kind of sad that it's not me who got chosen for the swap. That would be a hoot. I can imagine having to live with Shane Simpson. That would be funny. Okay, so let's talk about new shows and current shows, what we think you should be watching, what we're going to be watching. So we have Next Gen New York City. That's starting June 3rd. That's a Tuesday. And then Real Housewives of Miami, season 7 is starting on June 11th. That's a Wednesday. Those are both on Bravo and then on Peacock the next day. And then we have The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, which started yesterday, I believe, May 15th on Hulu. And I'm so excited. This is the most exciting one for me. The Bear starts on, I think, June 25th. And I can't wait for season 4 of The Bear. That was my very favorite show all last year. Housewives, Bravo, TLC, all included. The Bear topped my list. I love, love, love that show. And I did not find one person who saw it and hated it. So we're probably going to be covering it, and I hope you'll follow along. And then, of course, we have Love Hotel, which is already out. And then Ariana Madix is back to host Love Island, which also starts on June 3rd on Peacock. So we have a lot of stuff coming for the summer, and I'm really excited. Let's figure out what we're going to cover together and what I'll just kind of keep you up to speed on. But there's a lot to choose from, so don't forget to chime in with your ideas and suggestions. You could DM me or you could hit me up on our Gmail as well. Let's move on to pop culture and news. Well, Cassie Ventura testifies this week in the Sean Combs trial, and Aubrey O'Day is set to testify next week. So we know that the case is ongoing, and this week we heard graphic testimony from his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. It was a rough week for her. She said that he was violent, and then they addressed the 2016 video. They were expected to show graphic freak-off videos this week, and then assuming that Cassie is done testifying, it seems like the defense wants to get her off the stand as soon as possible. Then we'll be hearing from Aubrey O'Day. So it'll be interesting to hear what she has to say. And then we have the Menendez brothers. They did get their resentencing hearing, and they were resentenced to 50 years in prison instead of life, which now makes them eligible for parole. If they're denied parole, then they'll be remanded to serve the remaining 15 years of their sentence. However, a clemency hearing, you might remember, had already been scheduled for June 13th. So we are going to hear what happens very soon here. And did you guys hear that Chris Brown was arrested yesterday in Manchester for grievous bodily harm with intent? So apparently he's going to see the magistrate today, and we'll just have to see what happens with that. I'll let you know when I get an update. And then Kanye West, of course, he has to be in the news. Kanye West sent a cease and desist, allegedly, to Kim K after the Met Gala, claiming that North had been left alone in the car and was not being properly cared for. Whatever, you guys. When pop culture and Bravo News collide, speaking of the Met Gala, did you guys see that everybody is comparing Kim K's outfit to Luann de Lesseps? What do you think? Was it an homage? I hardly think Kim K is modeling herself after Luann de Lesseps, but it was a funny comparison, and it wasn't really far off. Check out the pictures on Instagram. And then Caitlyn Jenner says OJ admitted to unaliving Nicole Brown Simpson to her. And that's according to Celebrity Word. We had never heard that before. This is the first time that we are hearing this. It's all alleged, but dang, I'd love to interview Miss Caitlyn and find out what she has to say firsthand. If you're listening, come on, the Living on the Verge podcast. And some really good news, you guys. We have a new pope. So, formerly Cardinal Robert F. Prevost of Chicago is our new pope and the very first American pope. I'm so excited. He will be known as Pope Leo XIV. Listen, it's going to be hard for anybody to fit into Pope Benedict's shoes because he was probably the coolest pope in history. But Pope Leo XIV, Godspeed. We wish you all the best. And, you know, there seems to be a new excitement amongst Catholics and a new kind of rebirth, and people are talking again about going to the church. So if that's, what's come of all of this, then good for all of us. Well, that's it for pop culture and news and all of that stuff. Let's go ahead and move on to the Valley. We're going to get you caught up on the Valley because we last covered, I believe it was episode 3. So let's jump right on in. Jesse is getting ready for Santa Barbara and asks Isabella for shoe advice. Did you see the shoes Isabella had to choose from? Now, obviously, as a 4-year-old, she's going to choose the most colorful, most vibrant shoes. Good look, Isabella. It looked good with the wine shirt. Zach and Kristen are at the Tipsy Cow, and they're talking about Santa Barbara, and he's really worried. Zach is worried about how Janet's going to treat him. And then Danny and Nia are super excited because they're going sans kids, and they're more likely to get pregnant on or about this time. In side news, Mia is due on June 10th. Do the math. By the way, Kristen is due on June 17th. So yeah, do the math. In the cars on the way to Santa Barbara, we have Jason and Janet with Brittany and Michelle. And Brittany is telling everybody how Jax is rage texting her from the mental health facility. And, I don't know if you guys noticed, but she quickly changes mental health facility to rehab when she starts to freak out later on in the episode, but that's neither here nor there. And then Jesse is in car number 2 with Kristen, Luke, and Jesse says Michelle hasn't looked at him since they got there, and he really hopes that things are better than they were last week. Remember Dave and Buster's when we covered that on episode 3? Oy, that was not good. And then Jasmine is in car number 3, and she's driving Zach, and who's sitting shotgun. And then Nia and Danny are in the back seat. So they start talking about Benji, and Zach says he would marry Benji right now. That's a little bit hard to do, Zach. He's still married. And then Jasmine presents him with a really cute little mini Benji on a stick to take along with him to Santa Barbara. And that was just a cute little neither here nor there super cute thing. Well, they head to the beautiful San Isidro Ranch, and this place is gorgeous. I didn't get a chance to look it up, but if you guys do, take the time to look it up. I feel like the Vanderpump Rules team went here at one point. So if I'm right, let me know. Anyway, everybody starts to show up, and Jesse's standing at the door handing everybody white flags. It was kind of a dumb joke. And of course, Michelle didn't take a white flag. But whatever. It fell flat. The whole thing fell flat. And then Jesse explains the specifics about the house, the rooms, the bedrooms, bathrooms, etc. And he takes them on a big tour. And so Kristen and Luke are in their room, and Kristen says they're going to make babies this weekend. So everybody is chilling, and Jesse is drinking a lot of Prosecco. He says that they were using the Prosecco to make something else, and he was called out on Watch What Happens Live, I think it was, about it being Corbel champagne, and he said, no, in fact, it wasn't. It was a whole other champagne, so that shut everybody up really quickly because apparently the other champagne that it was not at the same level of a Corbel. So let's just leave that there. Everybody gets changed to go drag racing. And they show up at the drag races, and they're sitting there talking. And all of a sudden, Jesse decides he no longer needs a shirt. So he's walking around, shirt off, and they have a big old conversation about his always hard nipples that point out instead of straight. The whole conversation was weird, but what I liked was the aerial slow motion shot of the whole group walking into the drag races. They show the drag race course from above, and then they show the slow motion walking, and everybody's in their cool outfits. And then we find out that they're just racing RC cars. Come on, you guys. We got punked. I don't know. That seems like it would be a fun day out, but I don't think that I would have made such a big fuss out of it being drag racing if we weren't actually racing. The girls seem relieved. Everybody was kind of just looking for a chill afternoon, and that, is what they ended up having. So then Jack starts texting again, and Brittany starts to show everybody the texts he sent. And these texts are terrible. They say things like, "You ruined my life," and "You took my son and my job." And he's trying to just make her feel guilty for not visiting or sending care packages. And Brittany points out it's only been 3 days. So Janet says, "Block Jax" on Brittany's phone. And, she does for a moment. And then immediately Kristen starts to get texts from him. Nobody, including me, understands how Jax could have such access to his phone if he is really in rehab, aka mental health facility. According to Jax, there's a law in California that you cannot take away somebody's cell phone. So if there are any attorneys listening out there, can you please tell me if that's true? I don't think it's true. I think I saw something on Instagram earlier this week that said it wasn't true once and for all. But it seems to me that when you check into a facility, you consent to abide by all of their rules, including not having a phone. I guess Jax is the exception because he just really wanted to be on the show, even while he wasn't on the show. It says a lot about Jax Taylor, you guys. And then they start the races. It's really cute. They do 3 heats, and then the winner is going to be relieved of all the house responsibilities for the evening. It seems to me that that's not neither here nor there because Jesse's a clean freak, and later on he's cleaning anyway. So heat 1 is won by Nia. Heat 1 is Nia, Zach, and Melissa. And then heat 2 is Danny, Zach, and Jason. And the semifinalists will go against one another in heat 3. And listen, Jesse ends up stepping in on heat 3. You can tell he's pretty shit-faced at this point. And he grabs Luke's car because it was the one that he had used. And he didn't want Luke to use his car for the race because he wasn't in the final race. It was very infantile and I didn't like it. It kind of pointed, sorry about that, to how Jesse changes when he's drinking. So the winners were Danny was in first place, Zach was in second place, and then Jason was coming in third. So Danny didn't have to do any work for the remainder of the evening, but that didn't matter because we find out that he leaves later anyway. So I guess that was a moot win. Anyway, the races are ending, and all of a sudden, Brittany starts to notice that the headlines are starting to surface about Jax being in the facility. So she tells everybody, don't tell Jax about the TMZ stuff that's out, talking about him being in the facility. And then somebody says that they told Jax that they were coming on this trip. And Jesse says it was him and that he talks to Jax every day. Jesse thought it would be worse for Jax to find out and know that nobody told him. And he just wants to help Jax be successful while he's in mental health / rehab. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know that they should have said anything to him. It makes a lot of sense why he's texting. I don't know. So Jesse wants to talk about his friend, aka Lacey of Baywatch Boy fame. And Jesse wants things to stop, but they all maintain that she actually said that she was going to sue these people, allegedly. Janet says she did not like that she said that, and that an ex should not be getting threatened by the current girlfriend. I agree with that. Jesse starts to pop off and he gets sarcastic. And eventually he says Michelle was cheating on him for 2 years. And then Janet turns around and says, if I was married to you, I would be cheating on you too. And she walks away. Sick burn, Janet. Well, they get back to the house and are going to grill and have just a nice evening. And Zach asks for Michelle's advice on pulling Janet aside. And Michelle says, yeah, she thinks it's a good idea. So at that point, Janet happens to walk up and Zach offers Janet a beer, which was a smart move. And even Janet thought it was a good idea. And so then he asked if they could talk for a few minutes. I want to talk about Zach. I met him, and that really is just him. However, on camera, he does really come across as over chatty and nervous. And the conversation with Janet was no exception. I mean, you could just tell that his gears are turning and that he's not really in the moment. And I think Janet figures that out too. Everybody inside is kind of watching them talk and like hoping for the best. Zach says he's responsible for a lot of things that have gone wrong, but that Janet is responsible for some things too. And that he had always been sincere about his apology. Then he said he just got dropped and the Big Bear thing really sent him over the edge. And he thought that they were better friends than that. And he starts to get kind of emotional. And Janet just says, look, I was pregnant and in my feelings. And I think we just really needed to have the time. And all of this stems from the comments that Zach made last season at Jax's opening. And, you know, Janet says, listen, if it was your goal to cut me, you did that night. So it took a little while, but apparently they're going to be okay. Now, Zach says he was blacked out, and during confessionals, he admits that he said terrible things. And then they call Nia in because Zach starts to get too emotional and he can't stop. So it's really funny. Nia comes in like as the peacemaker and the Cynthia Bailey of the Valley. And he tries to come up with this big speech. And then Janet just stops him and grabs his hands and says, I genuinely just want to move on. So they hug and everything's better. Now, Melissa and Luke are doing the grilling, and Kristen invites Willa to hold a healing ceremony and a gratitude circle for the group because she thinks the group really needs some healing. So Kristen and Luke, meanwhile, are in their room. And Kristen's getting really emotional because she's taking all these ovulation tests and she says that her window's closing. And, you know, it's really sad. She says she just hates her body and she feels like a failure. And Luke knows exactly what to do for her. It explains why they're so good together. He knows how to calm her down and talk her off the ledge. So it's no wonder that they're engaged now and that they're having a baby. Jesse, Danny, and Jason are talking, and Jesse looks like he got himself a second win, you guys. In the confessionals, he tells us that he thought that coming to Santa Barbara, they would have a good time and leave everything in LA, but he was very wrong. And yes, he was. So then Nia walks into Kristen and Luke's room while they're having the emotional moment. And they talk about, Kristen tells Nia what's going on with the ovulation situation. And she says, I'm pissed off about all the petty bullshit arguments, given how frustrated and how hard it is for me to get pregnant. They eventually go over to the healing session. And then we have Zach crying and telling Brittany that it's because he's upset that she went to lunch with Janet before she told her what happened at Jax's. Brittany says, look, I would have done the same thing for you. Like, it was rough news, so I wanted to soften it with the lunch. And then in the confessionals, Zach says he's just so frustrated because Brittany knows him better and should have known that he was blacked out and she should have never told Janet. What do you guys think? I kind of agree with Zach. Like, if you know your friend's in a bad place, sometimes alcohol is truth serum, but it doesn't mean that you need to betray your friend when they're blacked out. I mean, I guess the other side of the argument could be argued as well. I don't know. I guess it's not that big of a deal either way. Their relationship does not impact me one way or the other. So what do I care? Well, now they're all eating dinner. And so the spiritual guide is waiting outside and there's a gorgeous sunset. So they all head outside and then Willa introduces herself and Brittany says she might laugh. She says these things like crystals and all those things, she finds them funky and that everybody should just pass a joint around and everything would be fine. I don't disagree with you. I really don't disagree with you, but everybody needs their thing. Jason and Jasmine are both chuckling and like devil's advocates. They're non-believers. And I love the Mandela idea. I love like the idea of what you're calling in and what you're choosing to release. So think about it for a few minutes and ask yourself that. What are you calling into your life and what are you choosing to release? So I am calling in peace and happiness, and I'm choosing to release phony people, toxic friendships, and just things that are inconsequential in the world. I want to focus on what really matters. Yeah, so that's mine. You should take a minute to think about yours. Well, Brittany wants to get back her sparkle and she wants to release resentment. Michelle wants to give up resentment and anxiety and stress and wants to invite happiness and love. Jesse is crying, but he doesn't say anything. He decides to pass. I think he's just really emotional about how Michelle is behaving. And then Jason releases insecurity and accepts confidence. That makes sense, you guys. I met Jason, and of all of the people that I met that night, he seemed like he was the most. Remember, I said he was really polite, and I can tell very, very quickly that he's an attorney. It's a lack of confidence. That makes so much more sense. He struggles with anxiety, and he doesn't have a lot of confidence. I would have never pegged him as the type. I mean, he's a very good looking guy. He's successful. He's got a beautiful family. But, nobody knows how we feel inside. I would have never pegged him for someone who lacked confidence and was anxious. But it makes sense given our exchange when I met him. So I hope that for you too, Jason, because there's, you're a great guy. I got a really, really good feeling, and I'd like to think I'm a very good judge of character. Sometimes I get it wrong, but usually it shows itself relatively quickly, and I'm able to move on. Now, Jasmine, she's going to release fear, and Luke wants to bring in family and accept that California is his new life. And then he starts to get emotional, and I thought that was really cute because you just don't expect that from Luke. And then Jason brings up Jax and asks the group to put energy out for him to get better for himself and Brittany and his kid. And Brittany thanks him and says she wanted to say something, but she didn't know exactly what to say. So then we get Jax's video diary. What the fuck, you guys? This guy can't even do rehab right. He says that he was being standoffish when he first got there and he didn't want to be there. He said now he's finding his emotions and he hates that he's there and not out with everybody else, i.e. not filming. He says he feels neglected and on and on and on. And I mean, the guy's just a narcissist. Let's just face it. Well, apparently he's been diagnosed as one. That's what he said anyway. And he's saying that she being Brittany, married him in sickness and in health. And right now he is sick and he is in a lot of pain. And it's killing him. His wife and his family will be destroyed if he doesn't get fixed. By the end of the video, he's crying, and I don't know what to make of it. I don't ever want to question somebody's legitimate feelings, but he does leave a couple of days after this, and it's not until the following time he hits rock bottom that he checks himself in again. So, make of that what you will. Then Danny ends up leaving because he has a gig in the morning, but he's coming back. And then they do the gratitude ball. I'm not going to go through each of them, but Jesse starts and he's crying and he says he's in the middle of a very toxic situation. And the fact that Isabel is thriving is amazing. And that is what he is grateful for. And then he hands Michelle the ball. Well, they showed the Jesse and Michelle montage, and they really did have a beautiful life, but it's toxic and it was dysfunctional. And he was kind of a jackass. Last season, And so the episode ends with Michelle saying that she is grateful for the time she spent with Jesse and they decided to have a child together. So everybody's crying and then Jesse gets up and leaves the circle. He can't take it. And at the end of the day, Jesse just seems devastated that she left him. And I really think that at least when this was being filmed, he was still in love with her. And then he's crying, he's drunk, he's saying that she ruined his life. And then he's upstairs. We see him in these really ill-fitting briefs, which we now know if we saw Watch What Happens Live, came in a 3-pack, white, gray, and black. Those were the gray ones. And apparently he has resolved the situation. Those were just a little bit big and they weren't white. They were gray. So there you have it on that. But damn, he went off. He's standing there in his chonies and he's talking about how she ruined his life and yada yada. And he orders the cameras to leave because he says if not, he's going to drive home. I mean, it was a crazy ending. The after show for episode 4 was really heavy on Jax. And let's just bring you up to speed real quick. Jax says that it's a law, so he doubles down on the whole cell phone thing. I think we all know that that's bullshit. But he does admit that he wanted to know what was going on and that he couldn't accept that he was not filming. No kidding. And Jax basically says the same thing. Instead of allowing himself to get better, he allowed himself to focus on what was going on outside. And it was because he's never been held accountable for any of his actions. And he said, you know, he feels like he's a cat and he's had 9 lives, but he thinks that this is his last life. He says that he would have done much better if only Brittany would have sent little notes or something. And then Brittany says, you know what? He wanted me to be his loving and supportive wife. Like, really? He was terrible up until the day he left. So Tom and Jesse are listening and their body language is like, you know, Jax, ay. And that's what I'm seeing when I'm watching it too. Like Jax is just falling all over himself to try to explain a situation that does not require an explanation. You were wrong. You needed help. You should have taken it. Simple. Then Brittany tells us that as recently as literally this after show, Jax still wants her back. And he says, I would have put my phone away and stayed the 30 days. I call bullshit. And then finally, Tom turns to him and says, you're strong enough, you're good enough, and people love you. I laughed. I thought it was really condescending. And I thought Schwartz is living up to the hype I gave him. And he's become kind of a new guy this season. So the producer asks Jax about the article where he sticks his hand in his sweats and he says it's because he needed to adjust his stuff because he's pretty well endowed. Oh my gosh. Maybe Jax and Lala do go together because then Lala, of course, just to shame Jax, asks Brittany if Jax had a breast reduction. And so Brittany says, no, but he had fat sucked out of his tits. Like, you guys, what is gained by knocking one another down? Your kids are going to see this one of these days. Don't agree. Well, Brittany says she didn't speak to Zach for 4 months. And Zach says that he and Janet were close friends. And Janet says they were never close friends, that she was just his friend because of Jasmine. Oof, hard truth. Now, they start talking about the gratitude ball and Jack says, what the fuck, a gratitude ball? Yeah, it was funny. It was just like one of those little handballs and somebody just wrote gratitude on it. I mean, say what you will. It made for an interesting ending. It gave us a to be continued. So then they talk about Jesse storming off and he says he can't understand that if Michelle's moved on, why is she still so angry and resentful? Michelle says he cries over everything. Why is she emotionally shaming him? I agree. Like, Michelle, you may be the Rock of Gibraltar, but some of us have feelings and emotions, and it should be okay for us to share them. Episode 5 starts with day 2 in Santa Barbara. We have Jesse admitting that he was pretty trashed. But he hired some chefs to cook dinner for the group, and he's hoping to coexist with Michelle, at least during the trip. Michelle points out that Jesse's already drinking, and it's morning. Then Zach and Brittany talk about the winery day and how Zach doesn't like wine and how Jax is already texting. The text said that he's bipolar and not depressed. Zach's not sure if he's telling the truth. And then off to the winery they go. Brittany mentions that Jesse had already had 2 bottles of champagne, and Jesse is really drunk, you guys. He's annoying everybody in the Sprinter van. At one point they have to pull over, and Luke is the person who looks under the hood and checks things out. And then we turn around and we see that Jesse is hitchhiking. Like, Michelle is glad. Everybody is getting to see Jesse's true colors and what she had to put up with. So then everybody decides to ditch the van and call Ubers. And at that point, Nia is on the phone talking to Danny like she's his child. Did you guys catch that? So they head to Grassini Family Vineyards, owned by Katie and Dean Grassini. It was beautiful. The tasting starts, everything's going, okay. And then Brittany doesn't like wine, so things start to get a little bit raunchy. And Jesse tells Brittany to spit into the spittoon, and she says she's not a spitter, she's a swallower. Danny arrives and says he needs to catch up. Yikes, we don't like to see Danny try to catch up. But then Dean, the winery owner, says that he'll keep Danny's wine glass filled. That's not good, Dean. You don't know Danny. Jasmine is concerned about Danny having one too many, and we know why. So then Michelle asks how Jasmine and Melissa met, and Jasmine says that they're just crazy about each other and they've been together for 4 years, and she tells a story about how they met. Janet confesses to Zach that when they weren't good, she would tell people his hair was a bad toupee. And Zach laughs, and he thinks like it's like hope. It shows that maybe the door is opening to a new friendship, and that's what he's hoping for. Jesse turns and says that the scene that they're watching out at the vineyard looks like a Monet. And then Luke says, I've never been to Monet, but it looks beautiful. So, of course, Jesse makes fun of him and tells him he has no culture. Well, Luke fires back and says, yeah, you aren't manly. Ooh, sick burn, Luke. Then Jesse asked to speak to Michelle for a second. This doesn't start off well. Instead of starting off with an apology, he gets, to, are you happy? Michelle says, I'm happy besides you. And Jesse doesn't understand why she just cannot be happy for him in his relationship and who he's with. Jesse says Michelle gets to him in a way that nobody else can. She says he's a disaster. Then he calls her a hooker, and she flips out. She storms off, goes to the producer telling her, I'm not doing this, and you can't say that. I'm the mother of your fucking child. And Brittany ends up confronting Jesse and says he needs to apologize immediately for calling her a hooker. He does apologize. He thinks that he's going to be able to go on with the conversation. Brittany takes the apology, grabs Michelle, and walks away. Then Brittany apologizes to Katie and Dean for all the drama. She's embarrassed. She says nobody can go to nice places and behave, and she's not wrong. They get back to the place there in San Ysidro Ranch, and dinner's out by the water. Well, Janet heads into the pantry after dinner, or maybe it's before dinner. Yeah, it's before dinner, to get a snack. And then Danny follows her in and starts chugging tequila. That's concerning. Janet's concerned. So am I. But he basically said it was because he just didn't want any drama from anybody. Michelle and Jesse tried to have a conversation. Again, he's upset she's not happy for him. And she's upset that he's obsessed with this girl. Jesse said he's in love with her, you guys. So does anybody know if Jesse and Lacey are still together? Last I heard they were, but now I'm thinking they're not. On Watch What Happens Live, he did not mention it. Of course, Andy didn't ask. That was the question to ask Mr. Andy Cohen. So Michelle is really upset that Isabella is saying that Lacey is her second mommy. And I would be pissed too. Like, we don't even know this girl yet. So then they start to really get into it. And Jesse thinks Michelle's deflecting because she cheated and she wants to write her own narrative. And essentially he thinks that she gave up on their marriage after she cheated on him. Michelle admits to kissing someone during their marriage. And that's the first time we see that on camera. Well, then he starts to get really condescending and starts to pick at her, and she flips out and throws a glass of what looks to be water in his face and basically says I don't even know why I tried. And then he says, well, did you cheat on me? And she says, do you want me to tell everybody? And he says, yeah. And so she storms off screaming, hey, everybody, my husband never kissed me or hugged me or told me I was pretty, and he spent all of our money. And Jasmine hears them from, I guess, poolside and says, wow, this is just so toxic. So Michelle says she's done. She's not going to talk to Jesse anymore except for pickups and drop-offs. Probably good plan, Michelle. Meanwhile, Danny is sleeping off his drunk. Well, listen, that whole scene looked fake to me. Nia looks like she's acting fake to me. I kind of agree with where Jasmine goes later on. I don't think that Brittany should have gone as bananas as she did, but I understand her point to a certain extent, except that Brittany, you get to choose what you share. So you can't be an open book and then blame everybody else because they choose to keep some chapters of their book to themselves. Well, Kristen, they're at dinner now, and she just wants to toast to love, peace, and being kind. Then Jack starts texting during the dinner. Everybody gets mad and wants Brittany to give up her phone, but she doesn't. And then Kristen, she interjects and she says, you guys, I had to take a Valium because yelling stresses me out. She just wants to have fun and play a fun game. So they play the hall pass game. And everybody says who their hall passes are. Luke's is Little Mermaid. Dun, dun, dun. There's tons of memes on Instagram this week about that, and it was a pretty funny choice. Even Kristen in the confessionals is a little bit puzzled about his answer. But then Nia says we don't have hall passes, mainly because they do know actors and, it could really happen. I'm starting to wonder why she's being so phony. I don't understand it. But I do know now that Danny on Watch What Happens Live said that they agreed to keep certain parts of their life private and that they're sticking to it. So too bad, everybody. You don't get to hear everything that you want to from those two. Well, Nia leaves the table eventually to go to the sauna, and Brittany starts to get kind of pissed off, saying that they're being phony and that she won't admit that Danny is drunk. Whatever. Brittany storms off saying that she has to share her life, but nobody else does. I think Brittany's just having a really tough time. She's going through so much. She's easily triggered. I don't think it has anything to do with Nia and Danny. Well, as per usual, the dinner falls apart. And then Kristen and Luke kind of stay at the table, somewhat defending Nia and Danny. Jasmine is pissed, man. She's activated and she's going off. And Melissa, her fiance, walks away, annoyed, calling them all fucking crazy. Melissa is the voice of reason on the valley. Who knew? So Zach takes Nia aside and tells her what everybody was saying about her and Danny at the table, and specifically threw Brittany under the bus. Now, he says he's, upset about having to do this, but I don't think he was. So Nia's pissed, obviously, and she wants to confront the issue. So they head over to the room where Brittany and Jasmine are actively talking about Nia. And then Brittany tells Nia, she's pissed that she won't admit that Danny is drunk. And Nia turns around and simply says, yeah, he's drunk. What? That was the best way to let the air out of her sails, literally by just addressing it and shutting her up. Then Nia says, I don't understand why you have to attack me because you're going through something. I agree. Jesse says that he and Michelle are the most level-headed people in the house right now. And we get a to be continued. So that was it for episode 5. And then on the after show, let's just quickly go through. Michelle addresses the cheating rumors, and she admits that she did tell Jesse that she kissed another guy, but it was towards the end of their marriage when she knew she no longer wanted to be with him. Do you think that that's okay? Does that make it okay? I don't think it makes it okay. Jesse tells Jax and Tom that he bought Michelle lingerie in Paris and that she wore it out one night. And Jesse says at the end of the day, Isabella is happy and Jesse is happy, so he doesn't want to waste any more energy. In fact, he even keeps a bottle of Aaron's honey at his house for Isabella. I think that's hilarious. That's really growth from where they were earlier. Zach said someone said that Jesse's on Grindr. And Zach says, we just don't want him on our team. You guys can keep him over there. Then Janet tells us about Danny day drinking tequila in the pantry. She said she felt very uncomfortable. She did not want to be around. She did not want to be in on the secret. Nia thinks Janet is just trying to stir the pot and is making a big deal out of nothing. And everyone else thinks that Danny has a drinking problem when he drinks too much. So do you have a drinking problem if you have a drinking problem only when you drink too much? I don't know. That just seems like a weird thing to say in general. And then Brittany and Lala talk about how Nia was Miss USA and lives her life in perfection, and maybe that's why it's so hard for her to admit that there's anything wrong, yada, 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 and it ends. So we're caught up on the Valley now, and we are going to be covering The Real Housewives of Atlanta. We're going to be covering Love Hotel. I'm really excited for all of the things we have ahead. It's going to be a great weekend. I've had a great week. I really hope that you are enjoying listening to the show. If you haven't listened to the Bitcoin episode, you might want to go back and do that if you're interested in getting involved in cryptocurrency. We have an offer available to you on that episode valued at $600, but it's only available through this upcoming Monday. So jump on that if you're interested. What else? It's going to be a great week. So I wish you guys all the best. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I appreciate you spending this time with me. Bye.